being a former director of tennis and academy owner, I will say one thing, and I mentioned this, I think, on CTC website, and that is pros and especially the directors and head pros need to use this time to brainstorm ways that when they do get back into the regular workforce of the getting out of this quarantine, so that they've got a clear plan. I mean, how often do we meet when we're teaching all the time? I know as a director, I found it difficult to really sit down with all my staff. And I ran a $6 million club, and I still found it difficult. So I will say one thing: every director who has pros under them should be having some video conferencing, brainstorming sessions. What can we do? What can we put in place? What can we have ready to go?
Awesome. Okay, so Dave, since you already started the show, now I'm going to do the intro.
Oh, I thought we were on.
No, I mean, there's, order matters in math, but here, not really,
Okay.
I don't really care. We can divide and, we can divide before adding. It's all right. So anyway, I'm Bill. This is 720 Degree Coaching. I'm on with Jeff Contreras and David Smith, and we're expecting more people to pop in. I better set it so that they're on mute when they come in. All right, done. All right, now what we're doing here, and we've already heard some really good stuff from Dave right there. So I'm gonna when I edit, we're gonna kick it off with Dave talking there. So I mean, as somebody who's formerly a director and may become a director of tennis again, I know the frustration of getting staff to actually want to come to a staff meeting for even an hour or less, or 45 minutes or 30 minutes, and have them actually engage and want to take something away from that meeting as an action item. I mean, so this is something that is a problem in our industry, is the lack of collaboration, the lack of sort of an ownership mentality. See, because everywhere I've worked, I'm always thinking like the owner of the club. Right. So, okay, what would I want to do? What would I want my director of tennis to do, if I was the owner? Right. I would want him to pick up that little piece of trash next to court 3.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I've had head pros who would not do that. I mean,
right. I would want him to do this. I would want him to do that. So then I go, okay, well, how am I going to do my job in a way where I'm thinking like an owner? But now, like you said, to reaffirm what you were saying, we have this opportunity where it's sort of forced upon us. People really have to stop and think. All right, Jeff, what do you got on that?
Well, there's lots of things that obviously we're all going through. My state, I'm in Texas, so our county just went into a they call it a shelter-in-place order. Basically, like most states, what that means is that you basically can't go out and conduct any sort of business. And I'm just speaking pertaining to the tennis pros and everybody who teaches tennis. You're not supposed to go out and teach. Now, I know for sure that there are people out there doing that. We waited as long as we could before literally yesterday. Our order came in yesterday. So we legally have to stop teaching and try to find alternative ways of obviously not only income, but how to reach our students and clientele. And that's kind of where we are right now. So there is a couple of things that I do want to say. Number one, a lot of tennis pros and in the CTC forum or in the Tennis House forum, I see a lot of pros that really they're kind of freaking out because they don't have any more source of income, right? So that's the big thing. No more source of income. One of the mistakes that I've been preaching is, and I know most clubs do this, and if Dave, you being an academy owner, I'm sure you're very used to this, but having monthly setup recurrent payments or reoccurring payments for your clients is like probably the single most important thing to have. Because right now, what you have going on is you have pros that have been doing drop-in fees for classes that have been set up through the month. So What's happening is now that there's 2 weeks left in March, more or less. Now the income is, I mean, literally has been chopped off. You know, we can, as tennis pros, you know, we create these monthly reoccurring payments so that we can then make them up at a later time, thus reassuring us work and the clientele. So it's not just about, hey, we got to make sure we have income. So that's one part of it. But at the same time, you know, we want to make sure that our clients are getting, you know, the service. And that's just where we are now.
Okay,
that's one mistake.
We're already starting to kind of get down in the weeds. So let's go all the way up to 30,000 feet and look at the systems that we have in place. And see, right now we have a chance. We have a once in a lifetime chance to change our systems. All right. So let's look at what are the industry problems that we can actually fix right now, right? So let's look at it from a global perspective for all clubs, all tennis pros, right? For a moment. So, like for instance, tennis pros in general are underemployed, meaning they don't make enough money. They haven't been smart enough about a career. I'm you know, guilty as charged on that one. Let me see if I can unmute Dave Matthews. All right. So unmute audio. All right. So David Matthews, welcome. Anyway, so I just want to frame the conversation as, let's look at it from 30,000 feet. What are some really big things that we can solve right now? And I think one thing is that tennis pros themselves need to find other sources of income that are steady. So, like for instance, I have job interviews lined up this week to be in a different industry.
Yeah, and I think that's very realistic.
Yeah. Now another one is clubs need to pay their pros better and benefit them. I mean, I think this is a blanket statement. I think it's completely fair and just. Every full-time tennis pro should have full benefits, period. So what are some other big kind of global things that we can talk about on that before we discuss any one of these things? Let's talk about what are the big systematic problems that we have in sports coaching.
I think because the way you laid that out, and I won't speak too long, guys, I'll let you have your turn. So the first thing that pops in my mind is pure laziness that you have from tennis pros all over the world. You have where the tennis industry is going to be going in the next probably 3 to 5 years is mostly independent work, meaning that you're not going to have a whole lot of people being employed at clubs because, I mean, we all know this. When you're at a club, you typically get that head pro or the director that's making the bulk of the money, and it's kind of divvied out, you know, and we're used to that system. Now, I'm not saying that system is wrong, and I'm not saying that it's that it's old or whatever. It's just the way the system has worked. And no, there are different alternatives to that. So, like, if you're not happy with it, leave your club. Go to a park, start a program, start being independent, figure out how to start an LLC, start your own independent tennis business. To me, that's going to be the next wave in 3 to 5 years, especially with this hit that's happened right now, because what's inevitably going to happen is that you're going to have a lot of pros that are laid off. That's the assistant pros. Those are sort of junior level pros. These guys are going to be going because they're usually paid hourly. Unless you're at a huge club and you get some sort of retainer on a month-to-month basis, and that's what you're used to. But to me, it's pure laziness from a lot of pros, and we kind of got on that, right, picking up the trash earlier. You know a good tennis pro when you find one, because it's not just about teaching tennis. It's about teaching tennis, and it's about being able to be a team player at your club, picking up the trash. Don't get your own tennis cart. Get someone else's tennis cart while you're going on the court. It's little things like that that make tennis pros. And just quite frankly, great employees and great partners to have. So to me, it's the laziness that pros have. They feel that they should be given a salary because they're USPTA pros or PTR or whatever, and they feel entitled to that. And quite frankly, and I've told you this too, Bill, before, I could care less what certification you got. I want to know, can you be a team player? Can you work? So that's part of the problem. You know, your question, it can be, it's almost everlasting. You know, there's thousands of little things that we can jump into, but that's what I want to start off with, is that's
okay. Gotcha.
My stuff's going through.
All right. So, so that was a lot, and you know, because we have 4 of us here, let's try to be a little more concise, but that's okay. But we're going to introduce David Matthews. David, meet David Smith and Jeff Contreras.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
All right. So, Mr. Matthews, so what are, you know, what comments do you have sort of about the global state of where we're at and what we can fix at this time?
I see a lot of what Dave was talking about. It's been going on here in the Atlanta area. I'm just what we call here, I'm ITP, inside the perimeter. But I teach mostly outside the perimeter, which is more in the urban areas, stuff like that. And I've seen what Dave's talking about been going on here in the ITP for probably 4 or 5 years, maybe even 10 years now, where people are getting contracts on these public tennis facilities. The cities, the counties don't want to manage them, so they lease them out. And all of a sudden, somebody who is, you know, it doesn't matter. Like Dave said, to me, it doesn't matter. What they're going to do is get pros to come in, they charge a lot of times double what I charge as a private, you know, instructor. And they're making a cut off of that, but I can't go teach on their courts. And I understand that. I respect people's right to get a contract and go through that process and stuff. But it creates a lot of lazy people out there. But, you know, I'm the kind of guy that when I walk into a park, I will pick up all the trash that's around the court, just because to me, to make the world a better place, that's part of my duty as a person, you know, of society. And I know there are lazy people out there that think, oh, well, you know, we hire people to do that. Well, that's irrelevant. You know, you got to do your part all the time. But just to expand on that a little bit, I've seen that been going on here for, you know, 5 to 10 years. I enjoy being self-employed. Is this going to be a tough time? Sure it is. Am I going to get through it? Absolutely. You know, I think that we have to hunker down. We have to do the best we can. I'm going to be teaching some just private couple of, you know, people on the court at a time. I'm not going to get on the other side of the net with them. They're not going to come on my side. And a lot of times that's the way I teach anyway. I do get up close and personal when it talks to grips and things like that. But after that, you know, you got to do what you got to do. And I'm not waiting on the government to come in and help me out. I'll talk with my creditors and people that I owe money to, and I'll get by. You know, they'll understand.
All right.
They know I haven't missed payments in the past, you know, 15 years. So they know my credit will be there. They know I'm going to come back and pay, and everything's going to rebound. But it's just a matter of how patient us human beings are.
Got it. Okay. Now, just a little thing of housekeeping. If you're not currently talking, if you could mute yourself, that'd be good, because the camera switches around to whoever makes a noise. So yeah. So when Dave Smith was fiddling with his camera, then we got to see Dave for a moment there, but he wasn't talking. So
I wanted to be on stage.
No, I understand.
Go Dave.
You know, that's perfectly reasonable. All right. So I believe one of the big solutions is that tennis pros who, you know, maybe are part-timers or whatnot, or, you know, are not top of the food chain and don't have the benefits, should consider looking into other careers that do offer those benefits, and then teach part-time, because when's the bulk of the action? It's after school and on weekends, right? So, like, for instance, one thing I'm looking into is the possibility of going back to be a school teacher, which is, you know, because 9 to 3 is actually a little tough to fill for a lot of people who aren't a director or head pro. Those are not easy hours to fill. But 3 o'clock until the evening, Easy, because you get all the kids coming out of school, right? Weekends and after 3, easy to fill. So if you had, I mean, I think one of the most awesome guerrilla marketing tactics you can do is become a substitute teacher in your town. So then what happens is you actually are showing up at all these schools and you have kids right in front of you and you go, "Hi, I'm Mr. Patton. I'm a tennis pro," right? Now you've got this face-to-face contact with kids and they remember you. And then when it's time to sign up for tennis lessons, they're like, "Oh, I know that guy." Because this is one of the big things about marketing of tennis is people sign up for people. You know, they're scared of programs. But if they are going to go be with somebody who they're familiar with, then there's already a built-in comfort level there. So, you know, I've resisted actually getting a real job for a long time, and it's time. It's like, you know, it's really an interesting thing. Another thing I'm looking at is getting into esports. So I'm connecting with a friend of mine who's in the esports industry and working with helping develop esports coaches, because coaching's the same everywhere. So, you know, another thing that tennis pros could do is they could get into life coaching. And a lot of people need that kind of stuff like right now. I mean, you know, there's a lot of skills that come with coaching that can be applied to other things as well. So anyway, who wants to, anybody got something that follows on that?
I'll jump in on it, Bill.
Yeah.
One of the things to remember, that if you are a teaching pro and you have this downtime, you've got to create mechanisms that do create those connections with people. And so creating your flyers, creating programming. I mean, I survived for many years as a head pro, but also just on lessons. I mean, creating a program that grew from 1 to 2 people showing up to as many as 75. 75 people paying $10 for an hour-and-a-half clinic. I was making extremely good money. But how did I build that? How did I communicate that to the community? That's where these pros who want to make their living teaching tennis have got to either work together with other pros that are in their facility, or network. Hopefully you can create opportunities to network with pros in your community. But more importantly, reach out to the community, create the programs that will invite these people, whether they be free programs, introductory programs, fast format, what I call Super Saturday programs, which we average 50 players every Saturday, 40 players actually every Saturday. But those are things that build my program, why we have the top team in the state, why we, boys and girls, but more importantly, why we have such a community of adults and juniors that love to interact. And that's where we create that mechanism to do that.
Awesome. And, you know, I'm reminded of something as you're talking that, you know, the question is, how do you get clients? And the answer is one at a time.
Yep. Exactly.
So right. If today you get a new client and you take really good care of that new client and you get them all the way in your program, you walk them around, you get them connected, you do everything that you need to do to assure their success in your program, word will get out. And so if you take care of the people who are currently in your grasp and you're engaging with them and checking in with them, like I just sent a truckload of texts last week to people, and I got responses ranging from "I feel afraid" to "haha" to "oh, virtual tennis, what's that all about?" So I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing a virtual tennis class. So that will probably happen later this week with my clients. So we can get creative, but checking in with them, that personal connection is so important right now. And then when you do that, when you're a community builder, then what happens is you get all these referrals. You know, I would say this is a really great time to ask for referrals. Hey, when we get going again, the program's probably going to take a little bit of a hit in the short term. Do you have people that you know of that might be interested in starting tennis?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mentioned this in both my books too. when I became the head pro of the club. I had a drop-in program 2 mornings a week for adults. So you're talking about that dead time. Well, your adults that are retired, they need something to do. So initially it was an hour-and-a-half program, $10 a person. I'd have one person show up. I gave them a full hour-and-a-half private lesson for $10. Then 2, then 4, all the way up to 40 to 50 consistently. But after I left that club to start my academy, those same pros said, well, if 3 or fewer show up, we cancel the clinic. They had no more clinics. They eliminated the entire program because they were afraid to say, you're not worth my time because only 1 or 2 of you showed up. You can't do that if you want to be successful. You can't.
That's interesting. So, you know, I have a little bit of a counterpoint to that because I've been at places where I could work that, and I could start with 1 and make it 2, and then it becomes 4 and all that. And I've also been at places where as it gets better, and then as soon as you have 12 people, then people go, oh, wait, I'm not getting a semi-private lesson anymore or a private lesson for $10. This 12 ratio, and then a pretty large cross-section of people leave as soon as the ratio is not a super bargain for them on the consumer side. And I've seen clinics die because of that, because you know, we had 12 people show up and me, and I wasn't ready for it because I didn't know they were coming. And so, you know, if I'd known, I would have had another pro there to keep the ratio right. But they didn't tell me. Now we got 12, and then next week we've got 8 because 4 people decided or more. That ratio doesn't meet my needs. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic that way at times. So Dave,
yeah, well,
Dave
I would say that in reality, yeah, there's some truth to that, but also through experience and knowing the ways to train 30, 40 players on one court, as you and I both know, when we're coaching high school tennis, that's kind of what we're up against. I think that's one of the reasons I tell every teaching pro, you should spend 3 years minimum coaching a high school team, because you will develop the mechanisms that will create value through figuring out how to keep 20, 30, 40 players actively engaged, feeling like they're gaining value, learning the game better, and improving. That's the big thing. I had, when 75 people showed up to my one clinic, this was a number of years ago before I retired, 75. And I had 4 or 5 players come to me and say, I didn't think I'd learn anything. I learned more in that hour and a half, even though there were 75 people, because of the way I programmed that hour and a half and created a value. So I think there's a pro and con to that as well.
Okay, so Dave, where do they find this magic you're speaking of?
Read my books.
So Coaching Mastery, they would find all this in Coaching Mastery?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right, Jeff and Dave Matthews, you've been a little quiet there for a little bit. Did I hurt your feelings?
No, just listening and just waiting. No, just listen to what I think it's good. I think it's good information.
Okay, so we've got these global issues, right? I mean, tennis pros are lazy, and then because they're lazy, they're underpaid, and so now, I mean, but now in terms of, you know, creating other forms of, oh man, I have to learn how to talk again. That's good thing for editing software. So anyway, like for instance, okay, a couple of years ago, a friend of mine, I was kind of going through transition. I thought I was going to leave the tennis industry. Turns out I came back, and a friend of mine was like, hey, you know what? I have a friend who writes ebooks, and he has this residual income of $3,800 a month. And I'm like, oh, I need to get busy on that, right? So, you know, it took me a little while to sort of settle in, but a couple months later, then I started writing The Art of Coaching High School Tennis. And I'd love to say that I had a residual income of $3,800 a month, but, over 5 years now, I've created this thing where I've got a couple of $100 of book sales that trickle in every month. And so, and also I've created some courses and whatnot. So this would be a really good time for any tennis pro to create products, create content, build a YouTube following. And even if it's not a moneymaker, it's an incredible marketing tool, So, I think the interesting thing for me is that because of my books, I've had people drive an hour and a half to come take a lesson with me.
Yep.
Because, they cross the Golden Gate, they cross the Bay Bridge to come see me, and then they have to pay toll on the way back. So these kinds of things, creating content is an incredible way to market yourself. So what are some of the other marketing things or content creation things that people can do? Because, Jeff and Dave, both of you have done some podcasting. So what can you tell us about stuff about doing that?
Go ahead, Dave. I'll go after you.
Well, I do, as Bill knows, back, when I first started doing podcasting, I did it first and foremost to, not necessarily to help Bill, but to get, people involved, to get education out there so that, I guess, for me, my podcasting and small YouTube channel, I do it more as an educational value for people to just better themselves. That's, I think, the way most good pros, and, how you classify a good pro versus a bad pro, that's up to each individual. But the way that I look at myself, my wife is a volleyball coach. My daughter's a volleyball coach. She coaches middle school kids up to high school kids. We all look at our chance to further enhance the lives of high schoolers, middle schoolers. We look at it as a chance to make the world a better place. Anything I can do, like right now, what I do a lot of times, I'm actively involved in the cycling industry. I've done a lot of bicycling over my tennis career, traveling around the world playing. Cycling was and is still a viable part of my daily routine. I try to ride, 20 to 30 miles a day. Right now I'm doing it on a trainer in my garage with groups of people through a app called Swift, which there's over 1 million users on there, not at one time. But anyway, we get groups of people. You have an avatar and you're riding along and you can chat with each other just like we're doing in this Zoom meeting. And it just helps people be better people. I went through a meeting with a gentleman here in the STA, Southern Tennis Association. Man, that's got to be 25 years ago when Atlanta got the bid for the 96 Olympics, and that was in 92. And we sat literally across the road. When I say across the road, maybe 300 yards from what now is the defunct tennis center for the 96 Olympics. And it's right there on Highway 78, right by Stone Mountain Park, which I live literally 6 miles from there. And he looked at me and he said, one day you should be working right there at the Olympic Tennis Center. And I said, I'm sorry, I've been in recreation. My degree is in recreation, planning and administration. And I know the kind of people that the state hires, and I know what they pay, and that'll never happen. And he looked at me and I said, first and foremost, people draw people. Facilities do not draw people. And he looked at me and kind of shook his head, but it's the absolute truth. Back to what you're saying, Bill, when you're talking about building, and Jeff also, when you're talking about building clients, that tennis court ain't going to draw nobody. You can make it as pretty as you want it to. Bill or Jeff or Dave, you're the drawing factor. And it's kind of funny because I run the little small-time pickleball program at the YMCA here where my wife works, and we started it 4.5 years ago from about three emails that somebody left at the front desk. inquiring, was pickleball going to come to the Y? And the director came to me, or went to my wife and said, your husband's a tennis pro. Does he know anything about pickleball? Well, I did know a little bit about it, but I'd never played it. You know, it's kind of like a lot of us. And literally within about 3 weeks' time, we had about 40 people on that email list that we put up a little sign at the front desk. Are you interested in pickleball? Boom, boom, boom. Literally within about a month and a half, I'm sitting at a desk there in the gym 3 times a week. And since that day, which was August 4.5 years ago, we've had 50 people waiting on 3 courts to play. And the denominating factor is that I sit there and shout out my little, not instructions, but, you know, Bill whiffs a ball or something. I make a nice little comment about.
Oh, no, I never whiff. I never whiff.
I know. I'm just saying.
Contact on everything.
You're just an example, Bill. But,
all right.
You know,
all right. Hey, David,
yep.
I gotta cut you off, man.
Go right ahead.
Because there's 2 things I took from that. Okay.
Sure.
One, be open to the possibilities.
Absolutely.
Right? When people step in and speak into your life, listen to them, because you could be opening up a whole new world to yourself, right? And then the other thing is, the character stuff really matters. You know, being in the coaching for a reason that really matters, and that is to make the world a better place, is a better why than to just simply, you know, create a profit center. You know, so like, for instance, I mean, I don't know how many times I've been running a program and I've got, you know, a certain number of kids, and then all of a sudden I've got a kid who's pretty poorly behaved, and they're dragging the program down. They're making it worse, and I'm sort of embarrassed by it. So I work with that kid to try to get them to behave right. But if they don't, then they're out of the program. I mean, I take them through steps, you know, I go progressive discipline, but once we get to the point where, after talking to the parents, the kid's still a disruption to what I'm trying to do, they're gone. And a funny thing happens. The next week, 3 more kids will show up.
Yep.
You know, and it's like, and I started to realize that parents pay attention to this stuff. And if they see that you're not managing it, then it must mean you don't care. And when they see that someone got booted from the program, then they're like, that kid's gone now. It's safe. And Coach Bill cares about that stuff. And so now I'm going to give referrals, because Coach Bill actually cares about the character of the kids.
Integrity. Absolutely.
So anybody want to go off on that, or do you want to take the conversation in a different direction?
I agree with everything you said. I think it's you know, it's about the person who makes the, you know, and I've told you this too before, Bill, is that we're no longer in the tennis industry. We are in the entertainment industry for most. For me, that's what it's become. And we are in the industry of making memories. So if these people, our clients, are not having a good time on the court, regardless if we're going to make the next, you know, greatest player is irrelevant. It's, you know, can we make good memories for these people? You know, I think that I live by that every single day. You know, out of my entire academy, if you will, of juniors, I mean, I have one girl who's going to go and play college out of, you know, 100, maybe 100, a little more than 100. So, you know, it's not really focusing on, I want to be the next greatest coach. You know, I don't want to be the next Nick Bollettieri. I want to be the Jeff Contreras that people will always remember and say, hey, I remember that time when we had, you know, Cokes and, you know, we had sandwiches or whatever, a great time on the courts. And that was something that will be forever remembered. So,
yeah, that's great. I mean, you want there to be some laughter. There should be a moment where somebody just loses their stuff for whatever reason. I mean, it's got to be fun. I mean, I think there's got to be a balance. I mean, if all of that supports teaching and learning and growing and getting better, then you're cool. You know, I think somebody could misinterpret what you're saying as a hit and giggle thing, and I don't think that's what you're trying to say. But I think some pros go the opposite way, and they give up on really teaching, and they allow the kids to sort of hit and giggle, and then it's the wrong kind of entertainment. So but I don't think that's what you're saying. I'm just trying to play a devil's advocate for how somebody might misinterpret what you're saying.
Correct. So that's not what I'm saying. However, I will say this, is that there are programs out there that are set up for that kind of thing. And I have set programs up for those kinds of things. And it's because I know the kids are not going to they're not going to take tennis for the next year. They're in tennis, they're in karate, they're in basketball, they're in whatever after school program they're in. So we do have programs that are specifically designed for parents, and it's the mentality. The mentality for the parents is, my kid is just out there hitting a tennis ball, they're having a good time. It's not like we're just giving them rackets in their hands and just saying swing away. We're talking the basics of the basics. We're talking, this is a forehand, this is a backhand, this is what a volley is, and this is how to serve. That's it. And we're playing games the whole time. Those programs are specifically designed to do two things. Number one, keep kids interested in having fun in tennis, right? The mentality of tennis right there is, we don't need to take it too serious because we're having a great time. Number two, it's a funnel system. So we will eventually filter out those kids who want to take it more serious, or parents that come to us after practice and say, hey, what else do you got besides this program here? Then obviously we can funnel them into a different program, but which kind of leads me into my next riffing here. So one of the biggest things that I see a lot of clubs, more independent pros do this, and going back to what Dave said, more independent pros do this than actual clubs. So it's creating a system pathway now, and what that basically means is, we get somebody that calls us on the phone and says, hey, I'm looking to do tennis lessons. I'm 37 years old. I'm a beginner. More independent tennis pros have a system already built in place to set up lessons with those individuals, or with a small group of individuals, than clubs do. A lot of clubs that get these phone calls don't have the proper programs in place. So what they're doing is they'll put in some of these kids or adults. The biggest example I have for clubs is, clubs will get a phone call and it's, hey, it's a lady who's wanting to do tennis for the first time. How many pros and programs are setting up programs for beginners, which is another whole can of worms that I can open. But they'll usually just say, hey, just come to a 3-0 drill. And, 3-0s have been playing a while and long enough to understand that this person's an absolute beginner. So putting a system pathway, or a pathway system, it doesn't matter how you say it. It's just putting a system in place where you have navigation for that prospect and that customer to grow. So that's a huge thing for me. We get those calls all the time, and we want to make sure that we've got a pathway for them.
Yeah, that's great. So, I got two things for you on that. So at my club, I was more or less roped into teaching this all sports camp thing for free. So I do the tennis piece, and it's Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 11:30, and then I go get lunch. And it's a funny story how I got involved in doing this for no charge. But the funny thing is, what do we do with the kids? I mean, we get out the red balls. They do downs, ups, and flip-flops. We teach them one aspect of a ground stroke, and we don't even serve at all. And then we might teach them how to volley for 5 minutes. And then the rest is game time, like you're talking about. And that has been such a fertile ground for me to get clients to come out. And then some of those kids, love it. And every time I walk by, they're like, Coach Bear, Coach. They have to scream my name, from 100 feet away. And I'm like, leave me alone, kid. Right. So, those kinds of things are really invaluable experiences, because you associate tennis with fun, and then they're going to it seeds the interest in going to the next level. Absolutely. Right. And then, the other thing too is that, Yeah, I'm about to also start offering a free tennis class for beginner tennis players. And I do this thing that I call the 2.0 test, because if a player can successfully serve 10 times and hit 3 shots that follow up their serve in a row in a 10-minute period of time, then I tell them, hey, you're a 2.0. You are now cleared for takeoff. You could play a tennis match and not embarrass yourself.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Again, I think just having a system and pathway, no matter what you do, and you got to. A lot of people got to think the way parents think, because that's, for me, the majority of my clientele is juniors, so we try to put our minds. We kind of set them up as the parents. So it's, what do the parents think when they search for sports? They don't want to. They have no idea what a USPTA Pro is. They don't know what PTR is. They don't even know what USTA is. They have no idea what these organizations or these certifications are. So the one thing they do look for is, can I put my kid into a class somewhere, and will they come back and smile? So your job really is to make sure that, number one, you teach, right? Because that's our job. We want to teach. But it's not so much making the kids successful. It's right now, or in the beginning at least, it's simply making sure the kid has a great time, or even we can extend this to the adult, making sure they have a great time so that they obviously come back. And, the more they get involved with the sport, the more serious they'll get. And that's
a great point. And I want to go a little deeper on that. And I also want other people to weigh in too. So put yourself, put your empathy hat on for a moment. Remember when you were a kid getting pushed onto a tennis court to go meet some, middle-aged stranger, right? I mean, it was terrifying. You didn't know what it was gonna be, right? Everybody's got a fear of the unknown, right? So what are some of the ways that you help break down that initial contact so that the kid is feeling comfortable at the end and like, oh, I just survived a major trauma?
Well, let me jump in on that, Bill, because there's a couple things I agree 100% with both Dave and Jeff on this, but I will say one other thing that you've got to keep in mind. Players come to a tennis lesson not necessarily because they want to turn pro, but they want to learn the game. And one of the things that I find is a lot long lasting is when you teach kids to hit the ball correctly, and within a mechanism that allows them to hit many, many balls rather than the hit and giggle or just a rally ball, which you throw out some green dot balls and you might as well throw out a beach ball. Okay, if your goal is to hit 1,000 balls over the net and that determines your skill level, we'll throw out a beach ball. They could hit 10,000. They get bored, but that's not why they're there. They're there to start seeing some results. So when we teach, we have 9 teaching cards. We teach the players how to self-feed each other. So when we average about 10,000 to 12,000 balls every 10 minutes. So 2 things are happening in our program. One is, and this is like our Saturday program when I have adults and juniors and beginners and intermediate and advanced players. 2 things are happening. One, they're hitting a lot of balls. They're enjoying the fact that they're not just hitting 2 balls in a line and then going to the back of the line. Number 2, they're working on a very specific shot that is relative to the game of tennis. So they're now, and this is why our teams are so good. I mean, our kids know every shot in the book because we work it under these kind of controls and then go into a live ball rally and see where they are if they're able to do that. That long-term goal of enjoying the game because you're playing. Here's my analogy. If I was a piano teacher and my goal is to teach a kid a song because that's how I determine they're having fun, would I teach them to pluck with 2 fingers, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and expect them to enjoy that piano for the next year? No, they would not. If that's all they could do, if we teach strokes and grips that are basically what I call gravity reliant, we're teaching them a limiting stroke that A, they look at tennis on TV and go, that's not what I'm doing. And 2, they're not advancing. there's hit and giggle fun, and there's hitting the shot. Coach, did you see me hit that cross-court topspin the way we're working at it? That's lifetime fun. And not only lifetime fun, but it's also developing the strokes that will relate to them as they continue to improve, to enjoy the sport of tennis like playing a Steinway piano with all your fingers.
Okay, I gotta jump in on that one. All right, so one of the things that's been kind of one of my guiding principles for a number of years now has been customer astonishment. So, you know, a lot of people think about customer satisfaction, but if your customers are only satisfied, they're still shopping.
Yep.
Because they're going to look for satisfaction at a lower price someplace else, right? But when you can astonish them, when your teaching is at a level where they come in and they have a wow experience because they hit a shot that they never thought would ever happen, then you've got them, and they will stop shopping because you're the one with the magic.
Yeah.
You know, like I have this kid. I don't know if anybody's seen my videos with Evan, but I'm doing this video series with this kid. He is so hyper. This kid is one of the most hyper kids I've ever met. And in the series of a very short period of time, I got him to calm down. You know, I mean, he's the kid who like drops the ball and then he goes through all this, like trying to regain control of the ball.
Yep.
And I'm like, dude, stop. You know?
Well, let me
going insane. If you just stop, you'll be able to gather that ball up, right? So anyway, in the matter of just a few lessons, he's now hitting some shots, and I take videos and I send that to the parents, and they're like, that I never thought my son would be capable of that. You deliver that kind of experience, and you got a client for life.
Let me jump on that, and then I'll get off. I got to share a story. I have a lot of adults that come out to my Super Saturday program or come out and even hit with my junior boys high school team. One of the guys came out and said, I didn't recognize 4 of those boys because they are tennis players now. In 2 months, 3 months time, he said this to these kids out loud to the group and said, I didn't recognize you because you were a beginner, raw beginner. I mean, these kids have only been playing 2 months. And now these kids are hitting topspin, kick serves, hitting all the shots that we teach. And what greater attribute to our program, to the kids that have worked hard, and then that adult's telling other adults, you got to go see this program because these kids and my wife and myself are getting so good within a short period of time. So that I'm going to piggyback on what you said. That is the wow factor for us.
So, so Jeff and David, what are some of the other things that kind of provide this wow experience for the client that will, help engage them and create a really strong loyalty?
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I think, listening to Jeff there, it's kind of the same thing. Over my years of coaching high performance kids, I usually, just from the work factor that I demand of the kids, that program usually keeps itself to around 10 or 15 kids that I can manage very safely. People say, well, you've got 12 kids and it's just you. And I go, you have no idea what kind of time I put into those kids. And, and I tell the kids right up front, when you go play these tournaments, and a lot of them I'll be at, I'll show up around Atlanta. I'll show up at matches. I'll ride my bike, 15, 18 miles and watch them play. And I'm in my cycling outfit with my bicycle, and they don't even know I'm there, which is kind of funny. It's almost like being incognito. And all these other coaches are, showing up around their courts. And I tell the kids right up front, I say, listen, the grass always is painted greener on the other side. I'm not going to tell you who to take lessons from or anything like that. But when coaches show up and they start talking to your parents, to me, that's a wow factor. That means you're doing exactly what you should be doing to be progressing up that ladder And if that's towards a college scholarship, things like that, which a lot of these kids in the high performance classes, class is, then that right there tells you you're doing something right. Otherwise, they wouldn't be watching you. And to me, that's, a great credit, not to me, but to their ability to listen. I always tell them that what I'm trying to do is actually shorten their learning curve. I was self-taught, went to college on a full ride scholarship, which for guys in today's world is not easy to do at all. But it's the wow factor when people start showing up to watch your matches and things like that. From a parent standpoint, that's when you can look around and tell that the kid is pleased. They come back. You give them right now. You don't even give them an elbow bump. You stay 6 feet apart. But all
right. Okay, I got to chip in there again. So, Dr. Bob Love came to Stanford University for a division conference here, and he's in a lecture hall with 150 pros, and he asked this question. He goes, "How many of you are coaches?" And so everybody raises their hand, and he says, "Now, keep your hand up if you have seen your player play a live match in the last month," right? And he said, "You are the coaches. The other people are just teachers." Right. So just know who you really are and what you really do, because if you are not watching your players play live matches, you are a tennis teacher. You are not a tennis coach. And I was like, whoa, and see, this is part of the whole interesting thing about people love to put down high school tennis. But man, as a high school tennis coach, there is so much more effectiveness in what I can do in a player's game when I see them play 20 matches.
Sure.
Because it's night and day from the beginning, right? Their first couple of matches, they're going to be a little tight and nervous. They'll loosen up. They'll start getting into the groove. We'll start doing some fine tuning on some stuff. And by the end of the season, they're 100% better because I'm there seeing their progress, the ups and downs of them, trying to build new skills into their game. So, that's huge. And I think that one thing that we can do right now is we can go, all right, maybe this is a time when more pros go in and start to become high school coaches. Unfortunately, in a lot of states, they have people sort of locked out because, I guess in Texas, you have to be a teacher at the school in order to be the coach, and that's kind of tough. But, some tennis pros really ought to think about becoming school teachers and contributing that way. So anyway, so the coaching thing, that's huge. You show up like David does, and you're going to make a tremendous impact because you went out of your way and maybe you didn't even ask for pay. But then to balance that out, I want to throw one other thing out there. I mean, every once in a while with my programs, I'll say, all right, we are all going to this tournament. I am not teaching any private lessons on Saturday, March 18th. Our entire program, everybody's playing this event who it's appropriate for. And I'm going to be there all day watching all of your matches. There's coaching allowed. You're guaranteed 2 matches. I'm going to be there from 7 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. And here's what I want you to do. All I want you to do is pay $25, and I'm going to be there all day and all night. I'm going to give you coaching all the way through, and that helps me with my gas and my time and helps me recoup the fact that I'm giving up a full day of private lessons. So who's in? And if somebody can't afford it, I'm not going to charge them.
Yeah. Well, let me throw something out at you because, what Dave was talking about, going out and watching matches. I go out and watch all my kids when they play USTA tournaments. The hard thing, of course, for USTA tournaments is you can't coach, which is why, as a high school coach, I love my role because now we actually have what we call full-time coaching, you know, throughout a match. So we as coaches can, not in our region, but in our tournaments and other regions do allow this. And that is where we can actually yell something out after what point and say, hey, you need to cover your alley. Hey, you got to get that first serve in, blah, blah, blah. Not that I do a lot of on-court coaching. It's more observation. But again, like what you were saying and what Dave was saying, those kids see you there. Parents see you there. You're creating a relationship that, you're going to create a relationship that is long lasting and meaningful to them, meaningful to you, meaningful to the parent. Now you have a lifetime, probably a lifetime student, or at least during their high school career. And how many of them may go on to college is certainly subject to a lot of different variables. But boy, going out to a high school match and being able to tell the kids, walk onto the court on changeovers is so valuable. And like you said, being able to see those kids under pressure and where they break down, and that gives you much more ammunition to know what you need to do when it comes time to drill during practice session, for sure.
Okay. All right. So this has been a wonderful time, and everybody's so incredibly verbose. I really appreciate the very detailed answers. But now, here's the challenge. What I want to do is kind of ping pong it, and I want you to very briefly give a takeaway from this talk that's a practical thing that a coach can do during this time that, you know, we have this opportunity. So see if you can get it done in 2 or 3 sentences. Who's first? Jeff, why don't you go? Jeff, why don't you go?
Go ahead.
All right. Overall, I think it's just reassessment of your programs. I mean, take this time to look at what you're doing as a pro, and, you know, again, you know, it's more or less auditing, a little more than 3 sentences, but audit your own programs, audit your own business model, and see where your weaknesses and strengths are, and try to, you know, advance wherever you're weak. I mean, that's sort of what I'm getting from this whole conversation. There's lots of things that we can do to make things better in our programs.
Okay, that's enough. Yeah, I'm going to have to get tough with you kids, man. Just come on, as concise as you possibly can. Dave, what do you got?
Which one?
Dave?
I don't know. Somebody.
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay. I think, like Jeff said, you know, be reassessing, you know, where you are with your career. Also look at other aspects of your life, like I do with cycling and pickleball and things like that. Try to add in things that maybe you hadn't had time to do prior to this, and then expand on that. You know, like I said, my whole gig is make everybody else's life a lot better through whatever sports and avenues that I can.
Okay, very good. And for me, I mean, I'm writing a lot, so I'm finishing up a book. Maybe this is the time for you to write a book. And even if you don't write a book, write some blog posts, write a 1,200-word essay on something you think the industry needs. And you can send that to Rich Nair at Tennis Business Newsletter. And if you write something good that's helpful to the industry, I'm pretty sure he's going to publish that. I think it goes out to like 9,000 people in the industry. So it's pretty well read. And, you know, Rich is a little edgy. Okay. Dave.
I'll make it short. I think you need to brainstorm to come up with some new program, especially after this downtime, that people come back and notice something very different, something much more dramatic, much more dynamic in terms of your program. Because if you are a teaching pro, you've got people that are going to eventually come back. You need a mechanism to get them back. You need a mechanism to keep them there. And they will, the wow factor, I'll finish with that. We talked about the wow factor. You better have a program that creates a feeling of wow when they get done with that lesson or program.
You know, and I'll go again. Make your program recession proof. I mean, if you really go about the path of excellence, then really what's going to happen is the people who aren't that good are going to be the ones that are hurting, because people will stop throwing their disposable income at something that doesn't return anything. But when you're a proven commodity, then you're sort of protected because people will really value what you do and they won't want to lose it.
Agree.
Okay. Any other good takeaways or things, just last minute points really quick before we hang this thing up?
If you're a tennis pro, go out and start making connections with your high schools in your area. And by golly, make it a positive and make it a win-win. And if you do that, you are going to benefit. That coach at that high school is going to benefit. And certainly those kids are going to have a lot more value for you that you've gone out of your way to go help a team out.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, mine wasn't really an afterthought. I was just going to make sure I'm connected with everybody on Facebook. So,
yeah.
Dave Matthews, am I connected with you on Facebook?
I'm not sure. You can look. I'm Dave Matthews. Also on Instagram is DMTA Tennis.
Did you go to the University of Minnesota?
No, there is a Dave Matthews up there. They got my USPTA cross with them. I am in the USPTA.
All right. Hey guys, come on. What's going on here? We're trying to wrap up the show and you guys are like doing crosstalk. All right. So I'm going to end the recording and put a wrap on this, and then we can have social hour like immediately follows in all the guests. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.